One of the best things about our island of Ireland is the 7,500 kilometres of glorious coastline with so many stunning beaches. From the wild west, with its massive cliffs and huge waves, to the more sheltered east, with its energetic towns and pretty villages.
Coastal environments like this have some incredible wildlife habitats. And while it's really beautiful here, a sandy shore is a very challenging place for plants and animals to live.
Plants and animals that live in these sandy environments have evolved special strategies to cope with the harsh conditions here. So many of them are unique to these environments. Some, like the natterjack toad, are very rare.
It's obvious the beach provides ample opportunity to get active, and we know that's good for our health. But it turns out that a day at the beach is more than just fun in the sun. The beach holds a whole host of secret health benefits that science is just beginning to understand. The so-called blue space effect.
However, our coastal environments are under increasing pressure brought about by human activity and sea level rise.
With so much to lose, in this programme we're going to investigate the effects these multiple pressures are having on our beaches and explore the ways that we can protect our glorious coastline.
There is something so very soothing about the sound of the sea, the smell of salt air, and the feeling of sand between your toes. But can the seaside actually boost our health? I often wonder if that sense of well-being that I feel when I'm at the beach is just nothing more than nostalgia for happy childhood memories. But might there be more to this than just nostalgia? Could the sea actually have curative powers? This idea is not new, of course, and for over 100 years, people have made their way to Kilcullen's seaweed baths in search of relief from all manner of symptoms. Edward Kilcullen is the third-generation owner, so I asked him, what's been drawing people here since 1912?
It was like Ireland's version of the spas on the continent, if you like. Seaweed baths were a cure-all for aches and pains.
When you say aches and pains, what do you mean?
Rheumatism and arthritis. Complaints that started to trouble people, would say, when they turned 50 or something.
What do people come here for today?
A lot of people who suffer from dry skin or even psoriasis and eczema, things like that. And then, of course, there's the vanity. So we get young ladies like yourself who come in and wallow in baths for hours on end for the complexion.
It's so nice and warm in here, and I can feel the oil of the seaweed between my fingers. It's just the most relaxing thing. Now, I don't know if there are any proven scientific benefits, but it certainly is very rejuvenating.
Forget about the science. There's a feel-good factor. Somebody will explain the science someday. It's one of these things you just have to try to experience it and to know how it feels afterwards.
As a doctor and a scientist, it's hard for me to forget about the science. The difficulty science has with studying the natural world is that it's highly complex, making teasing out the relevant factors from a seaside scene particularly tricky. But champion surfer and scientist Dr. Eski Britton is doing just that. She's currently working on an EU-funded project, looking at what evidence is already out there and how we might use that knowledge to harness the health benefits of the marine environment. So Eski, it's kind of intuitive that the sea and being at the beach is good for us. But have we proven anything scientifically?
Now we're beginning to look at, I suppose, what I've intuitively known and felt my whole life as a surfer. What is the sort of evidence behind this effect that the sea has on us? The sea is constantly moving, we have waves, it stimulates this effect known as attention restoration. So it has this effect called soft fascination. So it's when the mind is, you sort of let go of that sort of focused, directed control we have in our day-to-day activities that leads to kind of mental fatigue, exhaustion and stress. So we're immersed in these environments, in particular the sea and the coast. We often find that sense of calm.
So there are physical benefits as well to being out by the sea?
So we have what's called this mammalian dive reflex. So it's innate in us. And it just gets triggered when we hit the water and we splash our faces. Already our heart rate will lower as much as like 15% or more before we do anything else at all. One of the biggest impacts is that it lowers cortisol, boosts those like feel-good hormones, has really positive effects on lowering cholesterol. It's really important for things when we're thinking about treating things like diabetes. And there's really interesting research that's looking at that in terms of like aquatic therapy.
And do you think we have a lot more that we have to learn still about the beneficial effects of the ocean on humans?
We're only beginning to unpack and understand what those mechanisms might be and how the benefits are spread across different groups of people. All these things we still don't know yet. So the best way to sort of understand the benefit is to directly experience it, and the best way to do that is to go and get wet.
You're saying I'm going to have to get in the water now. Okay, all right, let's do it. I think we can do this.
Great.
So there you have it. A trip to the sea can boost your health in a range of natural ways. But maybe not your surfing.
A sandy shore is a very dynamic environment where land and sea are constantly readjusting to each other. The habitats here are important places for wildlife as well as people. As sea levels rise and storms intensify, beaches and sand dunes are our first line of defence. I'm here in Galway to meet Dr. Eugene Farrell, an expert on marine and coastal environments, to find out how human activity and rising sea levels are increasing the pressures on these delicate ecosystems.
Eugene, tell me, what are the main impacts of climate change on the coastal environment and coastal habitats then?
A good example is salt marshes. They're very sensitive to sea level rise, and so when any sea level rise, they'll move upward and landward. Now the issue becomes is they require accommodation space to do that, which means there needs to be open space behind the landform or the ecosystem for them to move into. And in a lot of cases what we see around Ireland is you have static engineered structures that the system can't respond by moving landward, and so the intertidal zone gets lost, gets narrower and narrower, and is squeezed and eventually disappears.
So this is where we've got a town, a road, a car park, whatever it might be there, and the sea level rise, they would move but they just can't. This is what we call coastal squeeze then.
Exactly.
How can we be more resilient? How can we make our landscapes more resilient to coastal squeeze and the pressure from climate change, sea level rise?
Structures are damaged during storms instead of rebuilding like for like. Think about building them further back to areas that are less vulnerable. There's a lot of areas where it's actually too late, there's no accommodation space, they're built, and we just have to basically maintain those engineering structures at a cost. Adaptation takes many forms, and one of the things is managerial policy and planning, and that's the very first step. We need to get these sorted out first, and then play it down to the community levels where adaptation happens at the community level in individuals, where it's behavioural change or where there's communities taking back ownership of their coastline and actually protecting it and conserving it as best they can.
Here on the Dingle Peninsula, the Maharees Tombolo is a tiny sandbar that separates Brandon Bay and Tralee Bay. It connects the villages of Fahamore and Kilshanning to the mainland. Because the Maharees is so low-lying, it's extremely vulnerable. On one side, there's the vigorous Atlantic storms, and on the other side are pressures of tourism as visitor numbers to the area increase.
What was the reason why there was so much change, like the sand coming in over the road and the dunes eroding back? What's triggering that?
It was a combination of factors, really. I suppose you have the obvious, natural erosion from Atlantic storms, but also, I suppose, in this area, it's just so popular for surfers, kite surfers, windsurfers, that we had a lot of pressure on the area because there was no car park. And people just wanted to be near the sea with their equipment, so a lot of the time they would just park as close as they could, and sometimes, unfortunately, it was on the dune, but I don't think any of them actually understood that parking on the dune might be damaging to it in the long run. And it wouldn't have been, it wouldn't have been just the trampling of one person, it's the cumulative damage done over the course of a summer, and in this case, 20 years, Okay. It came to a head in 2015-16, that winter, when we saw storm after storm result in mass sand deposition on the only road in and out of the peninsula.
So that's the road that runs right up the middle of the peninsula.
That's
here,
right.
And there's sand dunes on either side of it.
That's right, yeah. Naturally, people were fearful of the viability of the community here in the long term. Because it's a protected area, it wasn't clear as to how to control the sand deposition.
Damage to the dune system, combined with extreme storms, caused repeated blockages to the only road in and out of the Maharees. This poses a serious health and safety hazard for local residents. Join me in part 2 as I discover how this community is coming together to protect the sand dune system.
As the range and complexity of human health benefits from the sea is increasingly acknowledged, so too are the negative impacts of human activities. For centuries, people have regarded the oceans as a convenient dumping ground, simply too vast to be affected by anything we do. But human activity is pushing the seas to their limits. This doesn't just threaten marine habitats and species, but also our own health. Many of Ireland's wastewater treatment facilities fail to comply with EU standards, with some communities lacking even basic treatment facilities, and so discharge raw sewage directly into the environment. At one of these sites here in Connemara, scientists from NUIG have made a startling discovery: an antibiotic-resistant superbug. So where is this bacteria, this resistant bacteria, the superbug that some people would call it, where's it coming from?
Well, we did investigate the source of it, and we discovered that it comes from raw sewage that's basically stored in a tank just down the beach here. Flows down a pipe like a kind of a concrete walkway, and it's released untreated into the sea.
The sewage is released straight out into the ocean?
Yeah.
And there's children swimming here all summer long?
Yeah.
That's horrendous. And tell me a little bit then about why you come back to take more samples.
So we've just been monitoring it to see is it continuously here.
Lana, do you get worried when you're taking these samples at all for your own health?
I think so long as you don't swallow any.
Back at the lab in NUIG, Blonit's colleague, Dr. Dervla Morris, has test results from yesterday's sample.
So this is an organism we would have taken from the same location that you in Blonit were. As a comparison, this is an organism that we isolated from a different area.
So this came from the Spittle site that we were at this morning?
Yes.
And these antibiotics are doing nothing, and this is a completely different sample.
You can see there's a zone of clearing around here that tells us that this antibiotic is killing the bacteria on this plate. But as you can see here, it's growing right up to the edge here, so it's not killing the bacteria on this plate.
You can see a huge difference here. I mean, this cloudiness is the bacteria, and this bacteria is just being completely unaffected by this very strong antibiotic.
Which tells us that this organism is a carbapenem-resistant organism.
These kind of antibiotics here are the sort of ones that you basically have to use if almost anything else isn't working.
Absolutely. They're reserved, they're kept back so that you can use them to treat infections caused, in fact, by other antibiotic-resistant organisms.
And now we're seeing resistance to them as well, to our last line antibiotics.
Yes.
And Dervla, what could be the consequences of somebody ingesting this when they're swimming?
If you're a healthy person, probably you will never realise that you've ingested it. If you're a vulnerable person, however, or if you're very young or if you have an underlying illness, the organisms unfortunately can get out of your gut and can get into your bladder and cause a urinary tract infection, or can get into the blood and cause a bloodstream infection. And unfortunately, we found or saw the first report of a death due to an untreatable infection emerge from the US last year. A lady developed a bloodstream infection with an NDM producer, the same organism, and unfortunately all efforts to treat her failed and she died of the bloodstream infection.
So this lady died from the kind of bacteria that we're finding in bathing water in Ireland?
Yes, they are a major problem in hospitals throughout the world. As I said, we've a relatively few number of cases, but unfortunately the number of cases in Ireland are increasing.
So this water that children are swimming all summer long, this is full of human fecal matter with essentially these superbugs inside it?
Unfortunately, yes.
A 2018 EPA report identified 38 sites around the country where raw sewage is directly discharged into the environment. So is this an isolated incident here in Spiddal?
So we strongly suspect that it isn't. Under current EU bathing water regulations, there's no requirement to look specifically for antibiotic-resistant E. coli. We happen to do this in Spiddal. Through the next project, or the project that has just begun, the EPA-funded ARREST project, we will be looking at bathing waters in other parts of the country, and we strongly suspect where there's raw sewage being emitted to those recreational waters, we're highly likely to find similar things.
And why is this allowed?
It's not allowed, it's not ideal. Irish Water are fully aware of this and are working on introducing a wastewater treatment plant in the area, and I understand it should be in place by 2020.
We shouldn't need the findings of a superbug to emphasise what should be common sense. It's not a good idea to be pumping raw sewage into recreational waters where people are swimming. I hope these water treatment plants can be put in place without delay.
With the growing frequency of storms due to climate change, the viability of the Maharees is at risk. In response, the local community came together as the Maharees Conservation Association. They have started working with nature to fight back against rising tides and storms.
I suppose we've been very lucky that we've been advised by experts, academics, Dr. Eugene Farrell from NUI Galway, the staff of the BSc in Wildlife Biology at IT Tralee have been very helpful to us as well. And obviously the National Parks and Wildlife Service, and of course the Kerry County Council as well. We didn't know that marram was so fragile. It looked so robust and spiky, but actually it really can't handle trampling on it. And I suppose that was why we took the action we did to just fence off very sensitive areas of dune. We haven't fenced the whole dune off, obviously, but we do need to control access. That is best practice in dune management anyway. It's to have an agreed set of routes through it and then just funnel people through these routes.
Oh, look, there's some of the marram planters out now, is it?
That's right, yeah. They're going to plant for it the afternoon.
Hiya there.
Oh, hello, how are you?
Dinny.
Dinny, yeah.
Nice to meet you, Anja.
Welcome.
What are you doing here?
We're planting some marram grass.
And how do you plant it in? What's the technique there?
Well, this is long now, so you can bend it,
Okay.
and it will take root. This top will
Oh, the
take
top
root.
takes root as well?
Yeah. All right.
We'll dig in here.
Yeah. You're getting the neck already. I'm going to hire you.
Excellent, I've got a job. I can stay here for a few more weeks then.
Yeah.
Gladly. Okay, wow. And you just keep doing that and it just takes hold.
Yeah.
Tell me, you're planting up in this area here.
Yes, we planted this whole area 2 years ago.
Okay.
And as you can see, this section here has taken really well. But because the foot traffic coming up and down here, unfortunately, this section hasn't taken so well.
Do you like doing this?
Yes, I like doing it because I know it will save the dunes and...
It'll save the dunes. So persistence and hard work.
Yep.
And what are the kind of special adaptations that a plant would need to live in a sand dune habitat?
A lot of the coastal plants around here are really tolerant to salt. So of course you got the ocean spray coming in like that as well. They're quite succulent and juicy. This is a really good example here as well. So this is a spurge, and it used to be used for medical reasons back in the day. So you actually just pick off a little leaf and this white liquid just starts oozing out of the plant, and then you can just pop it on your finger. And apparently that was meant to cure warts on your hands. Yeah,
wow.
That's it.
What's this then?
Oh, this is the little burnet. And they're doing their business to bring on the next generation.
Two of them mating. Oh, I don't want to disturb them. There's just so much life in this one little patch. It's amazing. And what else kind of grows and lives in these dunes?
Oh, we have a lot of creatures, but what we're most famous for here in the Maharees is the natterjack toad.
Okay.
So we have 80% of the population of Ireland right here in this small land.
80% of the population of the natterjack toad in Ireland is here?
Right here.
And do you think I get to see some of them then now?
Well, not really now, because they're nocturnal creatures as well, so your best chance to see them would be at night time.
Okay,
definitely.
I would love to see a natterjack toad.
It's a special treat.
I certainly couldn't leave the Maharees without meeting its most famous resident, the natterjack toad. I'm here with Aidan and Ciara and Lucy, and they're going to bring me out to the sand dunes to see if we can find the natterjack toads that live here in these sand dunes.
You girls know the way?
No. There's one under the light, the torch here, looking up at you.
Only one way to investigate. The white, yellow stripe down the back is amazing, isn't it? It's really distinctive.
They have warts in their back that are poisonous, which stops a lot of prey eating them.
But they still do get eaten by like crows and herons and stoats.
Yeah, I suppose some of them kind of get used to turning them upside down and eating their belly and stuff.
Oh, they'd have to turn them upside down and avoid the poisonous warts on their back?
Yeah.
Are they poisonous to people?
Only if you eat them.
There's one in my shoe. We say goodnight to this little fella and go off. Look at him. Brilliant. I don't think I'm going to put my shoes back on like this. This beach is wonderful, and there's amazing wildlife up in the dunes. The whole place is clearly cherished by the locals and by visitors alike. What I'm so impressed about here is how the community in the Maharees have come together to figure out what the solutions are. They've brought in the advice of the experts, they've got the support of the local authority, and now what they're doing within only a couple of years, it's working. They're restoring the dunes. It's incredible to see, and I hope that this kind of approach can be replicated by other communities facing similar problems.
Our beaches are a magnificent natural amenity that we all have access to. They're precious because we have so few truly open public spaces. By making more responsible choices about our beaches, we make sure that the places we love stay beautiful, clean, and open. It requires a little more effort on our part and a lot of conscious decision-making. It's in our own interest to do what we can to protect this beautiful coastline.